The Mediterranean Sea shouldn't turn black at noon. Lightning shouldn't strike upward, clawing at the sun disk like desperate fingers trying to drag divinity down to earth. But here, where the Nile's sacred waters bleed into Aegean salt, where Egyptian merchants' noon prayers tangle with Greek oaths to the Stormbringer, reality has forgotten which mythology it belongs to. The solar bark, that eternal vessel carrying Ra across heaven's river, lurches sideways as thunder strikes its golden hull. Not the earthly thunder you know, but the primordial percussion of conflicting cosmologies colliding. The sun disk above cracks like struck bronze, hairline fractures spreading across its perfect surface, while impossible shadows dance on waters that can't decide if they're reflecting solar fire or stormlight. In the air between sea and sky, lightning writes hieroglyphs that spell blasphemy in the sacred script. Symbols that shouldn't exist, combinations that make reality stutter. Each bolt speaks in Zeus's voice while burning with Ra's fury. The storm lightning and solar flame occupy the same impossible space. Two supreme sky fathers, manifesting not as beings with faces and forms, but as the fundamental forces they've always been. Greek sailors watch their bronze Zeus tokens melt into Eye of Ra amulets. Egyptian priests feel their noon prayers fragment into syllables that sound suspiciously like Zeus Pater. The wind itself can't decide whether it carries the scent of Nile lotus or Olympian ambrosia. This is ancient Egypt uncovered, and this is Ra versus Zeus. The day lightning tried to murder the sun itself. To understand what manifests in this impossible moment, you must understand that Ra isn't simply a sun god. He's the heartbeat of existence itself. Every dawn, he births himself anew as Khipri, the scarab pushing tomorrow into being. By noon, he becomes Ra, the piercing eye that sees through every shadow, judges every heart, burns away every impurity that would corrupt Ma'at, that perfect cosmic order holding chaos at bay. Come dusk, he transforms into Adam, the completer, swallowing himself only to gestate in the underworld's womb until rebirth becomes necessary again. This isn't metaphor. In Egyptian understanding, Ra speaks reality into being through Heka, divine words that don't describe but create. When Ra says, "Let there be," there simply is no debate, no resistance, just fundamental truth manifesting as surely as mathematics. He doesn't rule the sun. He is solar authority itself, the principle that makes existence cyclic rather than random. But here's what makes this moment cosmically significant. When pantheons brush against each other, they don't cancel. They harmonize like different frequencies, vibrating the same cosmic string. Ra doesn't meet Zeus as a being with personality and choices, but as the principle of necessary order, confronting the principle of chosen authority. Where Egyptian gods perform functions, Greek gods make decisions. Where Ra must journey across the sky to maintain existence, Zeus chooses to rule from Olympus. Ra's method of divine combat reflects this fundamental nature. He doesn't fight, he redefines. Through knowledge of true names, the secret wren that contains a being's essence, he can speak new truths about his opponents. He unmakes divine functions by simply withdrawing solar Ma'at from them, leaving them purposeless as shadows at midnight. Time itself bends to his will through solar positioning, accelerate to noon's burning apex, reverse to dawn's potential, freeze at dusk's liminal threshold. Most devastatingly, Ra's light doesn't illuminate, it reveals. Strip away Zeus's thunder, his eagle, his adamantine throne, and what remains? The solar eye burns through divine glamour to expose the cosmic truth beneath every pretension. The stakes couldn't be more absolute. If Ra loses this confrontation, the cycle breaks. No dawn means no rebirth. No journey means no afterlife judgment. The dead pile up at the gates of Duat with no one to weigh their hearts. No solar bark means no vehicle for existence to travel from potential to actuality. Egypt wouldn't die. It would become a land where time itself stops, where nothing can change because change requires Ra's journey to measure it against. Without Ra, the Nile wouldn't flood. It would simply be or not be, with no transition between states. That's not death. That's the cessation of possibility itself. But Zeus is revolution personified. Where Ra emerged, self-created from primordial waters, Zeus was born hiding, raised in secret, educated in cunning. His very existence is rebellion, the Cronus killer, the Titan binder, the one who looked at the cosmic order and decided it wasn't good enough. He didn't inherit Olympus, he took it, marshaling siblings and cyclopes, giants and hundred-handed ones in a war that redefined what divinity meant. This is the fundamental difference. Ra maintains cosmic order because that's his nature. Zeus creates order through will and violence because he chooses to. Every thunderbolt proclaims that might, when properly applied, becomes right. Not the primitive law of the strong, but something more sophisticated. Authority through demonstrated excellence. Zeus proved himself worthier than Cronus, not by birthright, but by better strategic thinking, stronger alliances, more decisive action. The Greek divine combat philosophy reflects this earned supremacy. Where Egyptian gods engage in conceptual warfare, Greek gods fight through personality itself. Zeus doesn't just wield thunder. He exploits the pride that makes opponents underestimate storm pattern recognition. He reads the psychological fault lines in divine egos and strikes precisely there. Shapeshifting isn't just a power, but a statement. Form follows function, and function follows victory. Consider his greatest triumphs. The Titanomachy wasn't just a war, it was cosmos-wide proof that the old order could be improved upon. When he faced Typhon, that hundred-headed embodiment of chaos itself, Zeus didn't restore some pre-existing balance. He created new order through superior violence. When Prometheus stole fire, Zeus didn't unmake the theft. He bound the Titan to demonstrate that even divine knowledge serves the throne. Each victory retroactively validates itself. Zeus wins, therefore Zeus was right to fight. Greek mythology doesn't recognize failed rebellions as noble. It recognizes successful ones as inevitable. If Zeus loses here, in this impossible Mediterranean noon turned midnight, more than a god falls. The entire concept of earned kingship, of meritocracy among immortals, collapses. Without Zeus's precedent, every ambitious deity remains forever subordinate to whoever came first. The cosmos returns to primordial tyranny, where age equals authority, where, because it has always been, becomes the only law. The contrast cuts to the bone of how each culture understood existence itself. Egyptian cosmology is cyclical, eternal, immutable. The same perfect pattern repeating because perfection needs no improvement. Greek cosmology is progressive, evolutionary, violent. Each generation of gods overthrowing the previous because that's how excellence emerges. Ra is order, has always been order, will always be order. Zeus creates order, maintains it through strategic thunder, and stands ready to be overthrown by anyone who can prove themselves worthier. One god is a function, the other is a personality. And now they occupy the same impossible space. The eclipse should have been perfect, a moment when both solar and storm deities might be honored without conflict. In Alexandria, that jeweled city where Egyptian wisdom married Greek philosophy, the syncretist priests thought themselves clever. They'd calculated everything. The total eclipse falling precisely when Zeus's eagles flew highest, yet also when Ra's bark crossed the zenith of its daily journey. Here, they declared, was proof that all Sky Fathers were one. The statues they'd commissioned bore testimony to their theological innovation. Ra's sun disk crowning Zeus's head, lightning bolts radiating from the eye of Horus, hieroglyphs spelling Zeus Amun-Ra, as if divinity could be hyphenated. "Behold," they cried, as the moon began swallowing the sun. "We name Zeus as Ra of the Greeks. We proclaim Ra as the Zeus of Egypt." The eclipse shuddered. In that darkness between day and night, between Greek and Egyptian cosmology, a door opened that should have remained forever closed. Not a physical portal, but a conceptual wound where two incompatible mythologies suddenly occupied the same space. The syncretist priests felt their careful equations dissolve as something far more ancient than scholarship manifested. Ra arrived first, or perhaps he was always there. It's impossible to say when dealing with self-created eternity. His presence didn't announce itself with fanfare, but with fundamental certainty. "I am not interpreted, I am." The words didn't echo. They simply became true, rewriting the molecular structure of sound itself. Zeus's response came as thunder that preceded its own lightning. Pure authoritative rage crystallizing from quantum foam. "No one names me but myself." Not a declaration, but a retroactive fact that had always been true the moment he spoke it. The mutual indignation, two supreme deities finding themselves forcibly synonymized by mortal presumption, created the first spark. Not of light or electricity, but of pure conceptual conflict. The eclipse, which should have lasted minutes, froze. The moon stopped mid-swallow. Time itself developed stutters as two different cosmic operating systems tried to run simultaneously. But even gods recognize when full manifestation means mutual annihilation. To appear completely would shatter not just Alexandria, but the concept of cities. Reality established emergency parameters, a divine armistice that neither chose but both acknowledged. They could not manifest as beings, but only as principles. Combat would be conceptual, not physical. Victory wouldn't mean death, but definition. Winner claims the nature of what supreme divinity means. The eclipse became an arena, its darkness the only neutral ground between mythologies. Solar fire and storm lightning circled each other in that frozen darkness, each waiting for the other to define the terms of engagement. The syncretist priests, realizing their blasphemous error, tried to flee. But where do you run when the sun and storm have turned their attention to the same impossible moment? The first exchange was pure, unrefined power, the kind of divine masculinity that solves philosophical problems with larger explosions. Zeus's master bolt, the same weapon that shattered Titan skulls and would one day split atoms, met the eye of Ra, that solar focus that had stared down chaos for millions of mornings. Lightning designed to kill immortals crashed into fire that births worlds daily. The Mediterranean didn't boil. It forgot what water was, becoming raw energy before remembering its shape. The Nile flowed backward, then forward, then in directions that don't have names, because humans evolved, assuming rivers understand causality. Both gods pulled back, recognizing the futility. Raw force was a child's game, and they were playing for the definition of divinity itself. The second round turned conceptual, each god attacking the other's fundamental nature. Zeus reached for his most refined weapon, personality manipulation, the tool that had turned titans against each other, that made proud Hera love her tormentor. He searched for Ra's psychological pressure points, the emotional weaknesses that every consciousness harbors. He found nothing. Not emptiness. Function. Ra had no personality to manipulate, because Ra wasn't a person, but a cosmic process. You might as well try to make gravity feel inadequate about its career choices. Ra's counter came through divine naming, attempting to speak Zeus's true Ren, that secret soul name that would grant absolute control. But every time Ra grasped the syllables, they changed. Zeus had rewritten his own identity through conquest so many times that his true name was a palimpsest of victories. Cronus Killer overwrote whoever he'd been before Typhon Defeater edited that. Each triumph didn't add to Zeus, it replaced him. "I earned divinity!" Zeus's voice was thunder teaching itself to speak. "I am divinity!" Ra's response came as solar flares writing themselves across magnetosphere. Round 3 brought forth their greatest victories as weapons. Zeus summoned the Titanomachy itself, not its memory, but its principle. Revolution against cosmic order manifested as reality cancer, spreading the possibility of overthrow through existence itself. Every hierarchy suddenly questioned why it was structured that way. Every law wondered if it might be improved through violation. Ra manifested his eternal victory over Apophis. Not a single battle, but all of them. Every dawn's triumph over entropy made simultaneous. Order asserting itself not through force, but through persistence. The cosmic serpent's jaws, forever closing on the sun, forever failing, became a physical presence that swallowed Zeus's revolution, even as revolution poisoned it. The two principles, overthrow and continuity, annihilated each other perfectly. Transformation came next. Zeus became his eagle, diving for the solar bark's burning deck with talons that had carried Ganymede to immortality. But Ra became sight itself, not eyes that see, but the principle that makes observation possible. "You cannot strike what sees you becoming," Ra stated, and Zeus's eagle form found itself unable to complete its descent because Ra was watching it from inside its own intentions. Zeus abandoned form for pure lightning, not bolts, but electricity itself, the force that makes synapses fire and stars die. Ra became time. "Lightning exists in instants," the solar principle observed. "I am all instants." The battle reached its crisis when both gods achieved perfect offense and perfect defense simultaneously. Zeus's lightning existed in every moment because Ra was every moment. Ra's time contained all lightning because Zeus was all lightning. They weren't fighting anymore. They were becoming paradox. The sky began unmaking itself. Not breaking, unmaking. The concept of above started failing as two incompatible definitions of supreme sky authority ground against each other like continental plates made of pure ideology. Clouds forgot how to be distant from ground. Stars appeared at touching distance while remaining light years away. The eclipse itself developed schizophrenia, simultaneously dark and blazing. Both gods felt reality's foundations crack. Zeus needed the sky Ra traveled through. How can you rule Olympus if up stops existing? Ra needed the wind Zeus's storms drove. How can the solar bark sail without atmosphere? They were fighting their own necessity. And then, impossible in its smallness, a sound that shouldn't have reached divine attention but did. A child crying in Alexandria. Not a priest or philosopher, but a 5-year-old girl who didn't understand why the sun had gone dark and wouldn't come back. Her prayer was wordless, just fear and need shaped into hope by innocence. Zeus heard it in Greek. "Sky Father, why are you angry?" Ra heard it in Egyptian. "Great Eye, why have you closed?" The same prayer, the the same child, the same need for the sky to make sense again. Both gods paused, not in their battle, but in their being. They saw themselves reflected not in each other, but in that child's need for them both. Different faces of the same cosmic father. One who overthrew darkness through revolution. One who defeated darkness through persistence. Same love, different methods. The realization didn't stop the battle, it transformed it. The laughter started with Zeus, a rumble that might have been distant thunder or divine amusement. Ra's response came as solar flares that somehow conveyed irony. Two supreme deities, ready to unmake existence over a title, suddenly seeing the cosmic joke. They weren't fighting each other. They were fighting over the same worshipper's need for the sky to mean something. You maintain what must be, Zeus acknowledged, his lightning dimming from world-ending white to merely celestial gold. The sun that rises regardless of prayer or preference. Order that exists because existence requires it. And you, Ra's voice carried the warmth of noon without its burning. Create what can be. Order that exists because consciousness chose it. Civilization itself, that defiant declaration that nature's way isn't the only way. The eclipse shuddered, not with conflict, but with recognition. Two gods seeing themselves properly for the first time, not as competitors, but as complementary necessities. Ra maintained the cosmic machine. Zeus improved upon it. Without Ra, nothing would be. Without Zeus, nothing would become. Your sun may cross my sky, Zeus declared, and the words rewrote divine law retroactively. The solar bark's passage through the heavens became not just tolerated, but welcomed in Greek understanding. Your storms may bring my waters, Ra responded, and suddenly the Mediterranean's weather patterns made sense in Egyptian cosmology. The winds that drove Greek ships also carried the moisture that would become the Nile's flood. The syncretistic statue in Alexandria cracked down the middle, not in destruction, but in clarification. Zeus Ammon separated into Zeus and Ammon, each receiving proper honor without forced fusion. The priests, still cowering, felt their theological innovation gently but firmly corrected. You don't hyphenate gods. You recognize their separate necessities. Both deities came away changed, though neither would admit it to their respective pantheons. Zeus found himself noticing cycles he'd previously ignored, how even revolution follows patterns, how even chaos has its seasons. The next time he overthrew something, he'd pause to consider what rhythms he might be interrupting. Ra's transformation was subtler but deeper. The acknowledgement that order could be improved upon, that perfection might be a process rather than a state. The next dawn didn't just repeat the previous one. It carried the possibility of being better. Not different for difference's sake, but refined through conscious choice. Greek traders learned to pause their negotiations at noon, offering brief acknowledgement to Ra's passage. Not as worship, but as recognition of necessary patterns, Egyptian priests began, including a line in their rebellion suppression prayers. Unless the rebellion serves Ma'at's greater pattern, acknowledging that sometimes Zeus's revolutionary principle served cosmic order. The Mediterranean became what it was always meant to be, not a boundary, but a conversation between cosmologies. Ships carried more than goods. They carried the understanding that divine order and divine revolution could share the same sky without contradiction. The eclipse finally ended, not with victory, but with understanding. Light returned, but it was both Ra's solar certainty and Zeus's electric possibility. The Ptolemaic kings understood what those Alexandrian priests had glimpsed, but mishandled. You don't fuse sky fathers, you let them coexist. Walk through the ruins of Ptolemaic temples, and you'll find the evidence carved in stone. doorways that face both sunrise and the northwestern points, where Mediterranean storms gather, offering tables with depressions for both wine and natron. Eagles carved with sun discs in their talons, not claiming the sun, but carrying it, honoring both Zeus's bird and Ra's journey. The oracle at Siwa makes sense now. When Alexander the Great traveled across Egypt's western desert to consult Zeus Ammon, he wasn't seeking a hyphenated god, but a place where two cosmic authorities had agreed to share wisdom. The oracle's pronouncements came with thunder at noon, solar flares during storms, moments when both gods acknowledged the same truth. Serapis wasn't born from theological creativity, but from cultural necessity. After this cosmic confrontation, Greeks and Egyptians needed a deity who could translate between cosmologies without forcing fusion. Serapis became that bridge, wearing Zeus's beard and Ra's crown, but being neither, speaking both languages, but maintaining his own identity. He was what worship looked like when you accepted that different truths could occupy the same space. The numismatic evidence tells its own story. Hellenistic coins from Alexandria show Zeus's eagle profile on one side, but look closer. The eye is the eye of Ra, not replacing Zeus's vision, but enhancing it. Solar Zeus cults spread across the eastern Mediterranean, not claiming Zeus was the sun, but acknowledging that supreme authority and solar order weren't mutually exclusive. Every culture answers the question of chaos differently, and their supreme deities embody that answer. For Egypt, chaos was cyclic. Apophis waiting every dawn to swallow order, requiring Ra's eternal vigilance and routine victory. For Greece, chaos was opportunity, the chance for a hero, mortal or divine, to achieve greatness through conquest. Zeus overthrew the Titans not because they were evil, but because overthrowing them proved divine excellence. Both truths were necessary. Without Ra's cyclical defeats of entropy, existence would collapse into randomness. Without Zeus's revolutionary improvements, existence would stagnate into repetition. The Oxyrhynchus papyrus, discovered in 1897, but only recently translated, offers this fragment. When the eagle carried the sun disk across the merchant sea, all who sailed knew. The gods had made peace with paradox. Skyfathers need not fight when the sky is vast enough for both function and choice. The real legacy wasn't syncretism, but sophistication. The recognition that divine truth might require multiple mythologies to fully express. So lightning tried to kill the sun, but discovered it was trying to kill tomorrow itself. Zeus and Ra didn't battle to victory. They battled to understanding. In that frozen eclipse above Alexandria, two supreme sky fathers discovered they were fighting over the same throne from different angles. One sitting on it, because he'd always been there, self-created and eternal. The other, because he'd seized it through glorious revolution. Both equally legitimate, both equally necessary. Perhaps every mythology's sky father is ultimately the same cosmic necessity, wearing different masks for different peoples who need different answers to chaos. Ra's eternal cycle tells us that some battles must be fought every single day. Depression, entropy, despair, defeated not through single victories, but through relentless persistence. Zeus's progressive victories remind us that some orders deserve overthrowing, that better is possible, that earned authority surpasses inherited power. They're both humanity's revolt against chaos, one through persistence, one through power, one through being, one through becoming. The eclipse ends, light returns, but now the sun carries within it the memory of lightning, crackling at its edges during particularly fierce noon hours. And every storm, if you listen closely, announces tomorrow's dawn in the pause between thunderclaps. Zeus acknowledging that revolution means nothing without the next day to build in. You've witnessed Skyfathers discover their brotherhood in the space between mythologies. Next time, watch wisdom itself go to war when Thoth faces Odin, two knowledge keepers who paid terrible prices for terrible truths. Subscribe to discover what happens when knowledge battles itself for the right to define truth. This has been Ancient Egypt Uncovered. Until next time, remember, the gods' greatest battles are fought not for dominance, but for the right to define what divinity means.